once again to Living in the 21st Century. Joining me today is Maksim Yali, professor of National Aviation University, Ukraine. Maksim, it's always a pleasure to have you on.
You're welcome.
Yeah, so Maksim, apparently there's a lot going on right now in Ukraine. Apparently the United States had granted permission to Ukraine to use long-term missiles into Russia. Putin is retaliating verbally by stating that there will be consequences to pay to the US as well as European nations. Should the European nations and US take that as a speech of bluffing, or should they take him serious by it?
First of all, Putin has answered already. Yeah, he used a few days ago ballistic missiles. We consider it that it's an intercontinental missile, but he claims that it's middle term, I would say, which can reach targets in distance for 5,000-6,000 kilometers. Actually, it was the first time ever such huge ballistic missiles was used, and it can bear nuclear warheads and is designed for nuclear strikes. This time it was used without nuclear warheads, but still we saw how the potential of it here, and they used it in Dnipro. Well, actually, one of the biggest cities in Ukraine with more than 1 million inhabitants. Of course, it was terrific. So it was, I would say, as he explained it, a signal that he is ready for escalation. He is ready to escalate, and in case United States and Europe will go on supporting Ukraine, supplying long-range missiles with the help of which we shall target military targets, as we did last week in Russia, then he may use nuclear weapons. So it was a signal, but I suppose, first of all, Ukraine should be afraid of it, because definitely he will not use it at once against, for example, Great Britain or France, which also supply us missiles with the help of which we can hit now military targets in Ukraine. And of course, he will not use it first against the United States. I suppose that until Donald Trump comes into power on the 20th of January, still he will not use nukes even against Ukraine, because definitely it will lead to very serious consequences for him personally and for Russia, because even China, the closest partner of Russia, stands against using of nuclear weapons, and they made such statements officially in autumn 2022 when Ukrainian armed forces were deliberating our occupied territories successfully, and through Putin for the first time threatened to use nuclear weapons against Ukraine. So I suppose in this issue, using nuclear weapons, there is a consensus between United States and China, and they stand against it. So I suppose, taking into account the possible consequences for Russia and for Putin personally, he will not dare to use nukes even against Ukraine, at least, as I have mentioned, until 20th of January, when Trump comes to power, just because he also hopes for negotiations and waiting for it.
Yeah. Well, I quite agree. Using nuclear weapons against Ukraine is not only going to affect Ukraine, but it will affect those surrounding neighboring countries as well. And that is something seriously to take into consideration. However, though, my concern is the Trump-Putin relationship. Is it a diplomatic kind of relationship, or is it a personal relationship, or both? Because this is a war where and there's an old saying that goes like this: two male rats can't live in the same hole. Two superpowers can't really govern in the same world. And I see this coming down to a matter of superiority. Which nation is stronger than the next? Because I say that for this reason. Russia reached out to North Korea. North Korea made a threat recently, it was like a day or 2 days ago, that he is looking at using thermal bombs or something like that, nuclear bombs, which is very serious. I don't know what his capacity is like, North Korea. At one point, I understood they didn't have the capability of even reaching U.S. mainland, but now they have that ability. So he used a direct threat to the United States. I don't know if to take that man seriously or just bluffing. That's the issue we have with dictators. In a democratic society, we tend to take things a kind of lenient, but observant at the same time. Dictators don't do it that way. They do it at impulse, with the ability to win. And I just went down this line because you don't want to know one day you're just lying there and this guy decides to do something crazy. With the understanding that the United States had granted permission to give news long-term missiles into Russia to disrupt their warehousing or military bases, whatever the case may be. And to avoid too much damages, knowing that Russia is pretty weak right now with the amount of weaponry they would have used over the past 2 years, and now we're resorting to having to ask outside countries for assistance, it doesn't put him in a good position, and desperate people do desperate things on the desperate measures. So that's why I asked the question, what is your opinion? What do you think about Trump-Putin relationship when it comes to this war? Do you think it's going to be a peaceful solution in trying to solve this issue, that Putin will pull back and pull back indefinitely, or it would be just something to say to Ukraine, listen, give it up, and Putin wins everything? I don't think that's Zelensky option. So what is your opinion pertaining to that?
Well, actually, I suppose that definitely at the very beginning, they will negotiate, probably they will meet, but of course, such meetings have been prepared for a long time by advisors, by Ministry of Foreign Affairs, etc., etc. So, and if only there is a solution, they find a common solution which will fit to both Trump and Putin, then they meet and make a deal, just as Trump promised and was promising all these 2 years since almost 3, since the beginning of full-scale invasion, that he would call Zelensky, he would call Putin, and make a deal. Of course, it's much more difficult, in fact. So the condition for them to reach such an agreement is the following. It depends whether Putin is ready to come for compromises and to make several steps back in his claims for peace. I'd like to remind to you and to your viewers that he wants us, Ukraine, to withdraw troops from Zaporizhia and Kherson. These are two administrative centers of Zaporizhia and Kherson region. Zaporizhia is a very big one, about 600,000 citizens living there, but what is more important, it's a very important industrial, military, and logistic center, producing a lot of kind of weapons, engines for helicopters and fighter jets, for example. We were selling them, Ukraine to Russia before invasion in 2014. And it's very important that enterprise for Russia, they failed to substitute it during 10 years and to build the same. So it was built in Soviet era, of course, but next is Dnipro city, where missiles produced and nuclear ballistic missiles used to be produced in Soviet era. And it's very close from Zaporizhia. So of course, and Putin never controlled it, and he does not have actual military potential to occupy it, at least in the nearest future. It's too big and too fortified. So of course, he will not be able to reach these goals with military approaches in the coming future. And of course, Ukraine will not agree just to give it. And of course, Ukraine will not agree that these occupied territories now belong to Russia. And President Zelensky has claimed it already. So if Putin keeps insisting on these conditions for us to give them all these territories, of course, this compromise will not be reached. Besides, for Trump, he also needs a diplomatic victory, yeah? And such conditions are unacceptable for him because it will be considered a bad deal that Putin beat him. And therefore, I suppose that's at least two main conditions and compromises Putin should agree to reach this agreement, I would say, for negotiations between Trump and Putin to be successful.
Yeah, because I'm wondering how serious it's going to be between Trump and Putin. I mean, this is a guy that threatened the North Korean president at one point if he didn't stop from using his rockets. In fact, he referred to him as the Rocket Man. And then before you knew it, he was in the Rocket Man Nation enjoying his trip with Kim Jong-un, that's his name. And we see in another situation, he loves the dictators. He idolizes these dictators. And how could you really make something substantial that makes sense between Russia and Ukraine? I don't see it. I don't even think these other dictators around the world, whether it's China or North Korea or Putin himself, have really any respect for this person. And that in itself could be conflict of interest if there is some personal feeling or desire opposed to a diplomatic, professional insight of what needs to be done. And I don't know if that is realistic as it may appear. I don't know really how that is going to work out. But my question is, how strong is the European support and will continuously be there for the Ukraine? We don't know what is going to happen here in the U.S. In terms of economically speaking, if they want to stop supporting Ukraine with such billions of dollars in aid and so forth. What would be the outcome? We can only speak about this juncture with Biden and so forth. I see where Trump's loyalty is like. He loves Putin. So I hope Zelensky in this case is having his allies very focused in support. You're not going to abandon the United States of America because we are there for Ukraine, but at the same very time, it's a new administration coming. We don't know how it's going to work out. So the independency of being able to rely on European allies may play an essential role in this case. I don't know, you may have more insight in this opposed to I do. I don't know. What's your opinion on that?
Well, you mean in case Trump stops giving supply and assistance to Ukraine military, right? Whether we can rely on our European allies and on ourselves, if I understood correctly the question, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, actually, of course, taking into account that more than 50% of weapons, shells comes from the United States, and taking into account the level of production between in European states, unfortunately, they cannot substitute U.S. assistance in case Trump decides to quit giving assistance to Ukraine. Because for several decades since the end of Cold War, European states, even Great Britain, France, they kept reducing military production. And even for these almost 3 years, which this unprovoked full-scale military aggression is continuing against Ukraine, they haven't managed significantly to increase the production of weapons and shells. For example, these even missiles, France promised to give us 40 Scalp, they call these missiles, which are launched from fighter jets. They give us only 10. Mm-hmm. So, because they lack of it themselves. Mm-hmm. Germany also rejects us to give their missiles, which can hit for 500 kilometers. They will not agree, definitely. Great Britain, Storm Shadows, which are produced together with France, they're given us, but very few ones. So actually, that's what concerns long-range missiles. The same concerns with the shells for artillery, which plays a paramount role in this war. Also, for example, I'll give you some figures. EU promised us to give us 1 million shells for artillery this year. They hardly managed to do it. Recent was information. North Korea gave to Russia from 3 million up to 6 million shells for artillery. And they keep increasing their production just as Russia does. So even United States now, Washington constantly claims that they are running out of weaponry, shells, and also they cannot produce as many weaponry to substitute the shells and weapons they are given to Ukraine from storages. So the same problem, even United States also were decreasing the production of weapons for decades, and they are facing this problem. Mm-hmm. So definitely not. Okay. If US stops giving us assistance, of course, it will not be enough. Even because all that military aid together given by US and European countries is not enough to make the balance, because the figures differ on different points of front line, but it's at least 3, 4, up to sometimes it's 10 times Russia uses shells in comparison with Ukraine. Mm-hmm. So that's a huge advantage
Yeah,
Russia has. Besides, it is using constantly ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, targeted, for example, 17th of November, they used 120 missiles of different kinds, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, and 90 drones, Iranian drones, they use every night, every day. So that's the problem. And as I told you, even nowadays, we still need more of support from US, from EU, and of course, if US stops giving us assistance, we'll face very serious problems and may lose this war.
Yeah, one of my concerns too is that, Trump is not really in favor much of NATO because he believes that NATO is not paying their fair share and US is paying the majority and so forth. This in a time where we need this integration between allied forces. We need forces to be together, and I believe that the European nations are going to have to look at that. NATO will have to look at that segment seriously when it comes to the United States and NATO. And for what they lack in contributing financially to NATO, at least they can make up and contribute to Ukraine in military assistance and so forth. The other thing is that I believe there have to be a neutral understanding right now with a new administration coming in, that not to get your hopes up too high, expect assistance, but I don't know if Ukraine may have to strategize different ways of trying to win this war or whatever the case may be. And I'm stating this because of what you would have experienced in the past and what recently Trump would have said to Zelensky when he was here in the United States when it came to the war in Russia and so forth. He indicated that he is leaning more towards Putin than even facilitating Ukraine. So with that said, and it was spoken in a very diplomatic way, not that he said he wouldn't give Ukraine assistance. He never said that. But at the same time, we see where he leaned towards in support based on what his philosophies or ideologies are in this war. So that's why I said that Zelensky can have to maintain a neutral mentality in terms of dependency on the United States and try to figure out ways of urging Germany and those places that have good long-range missiles, if that is what it's going to take to help win this war, to step up and support. I think Germany should be able to do that. Your input.
What do you mean? What's the question? I just...
Okay. So what the question I'm asking here, was Zelensky try to urge Germany to step up and issue some of those long-range missiles, or do you think Zelensky would give up on asking Germany that?
Well, actually, Germany is going to face early parliamentary elections. After Trump won in US in elections, the coalition of German government split it up. Mm-hmm. And now they declared early parliamentary elections. That's actually how the victory of Trump already influenced internal policy inside Germany. And of course, Olaf Scholz, the Chancellor of Germany, due to prognosis, his party will lose the elections. But anyway, until then, until the end of February, when the elections take part, he many times already stated that he will not allow and he will not supply Ukraine with long-range missiles. Because regional elections showed that the parties who stand for restoring relationships with Russia won. And now he's trying, and as you know, he called already Putin himself. He's trying to, gain support of these citizens who stand for restoring relationships, because Germany's economy was very much dependent on cheap energy resources, gas and oil from Russia, and there was inflation, increase of prices for electricity and commodities, and the reaction was negative among citizens, and the support of the party of ruling party in Germany decreased significantly. So therefore, definitely Germany, until elections take place, will not agree. The opponent of Chancellor Scholz, the leader of Christian Democrats of Germany, he claims that if Putin does not agree to stop the war in Ukraine, he will supply these long-range missiles. So we should wait for elections.
Okay, we can on the last minute. Is there any word before we close that you would like to say to the new administration, or preferably Donald Trump, in terms of supporting Ukraine and continually support Ukraine?
Well, I wish Donald Trump would hear me, yeah, and of course, as I know now, he's getting more and more information, calling to presidents of France, Germany, today the head of NATO, Mr. Rutte,